Hello, welcome in as we're bringing other attendees in. As soon we'll give it another minute or so and then get started. And you may hear a very loud, almost 5-year-old in the background doing bedtime. I apologize for that.
Happy almost birthday to your almost 5-year-old.
Yeah, she's excited. It's towards the end of this month. Okay. Looks like the attendee number has been steady here for a few moments. So I will call this board workshop to order and begin with our land acknowledgement. South Woodby School District would like to begin this workshop by acknowledging that we gather on the ancestral homelands originally known as Shakolchi in Lushootseed of the coastal Salish peoples on the lands of the Lower Skagit, Tulalip, Swinomish, Snohomish, Stillaguamish, and Suquamish, who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin since time immemorial and have hunted, fished, gathered, and taken care of these lands. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and we honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. Please join me in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude to the indigenous people of this territory and for their enduring care and protection of the land in which we currently occupy and share through the Treaty of Point Elliott, signed by 82 tribes in Mukilteo on January 22nd, 1855. At the conclusion of this board workshop, we will adjourn to executive session. That should last approximately no more than 1 hour, somewhere right around there, and it will be a executive session sorry, I lost my notes here. It will be an executive session to discuss personnel issues, the performance of a public employee. Before we move on to the next item on the agenda, I would like to note that our Q&A, as always, will be open. Please, if you comment, include your name and the area of the island that you are from. I will not read anonymous comments, just as I would not allow anonymous comments in a in-person setting. If the comments are not in regards to the current item on the agenda, but are in regards to something later in the agenda, I will skip them until we reach that item on the agenda. But we do want to hear from the community, so the Q&A will be open throughout the workshop. All right, let's move on to item 2 on the agenda, the social emotional learning update. I'm really looking forward to seeing what we have prepared here. And all right.
Great.
So I'm really happy to have all of our principals as well as our principal intern with us and our athletic director, assistant principal as well. So the presentation tonight will be, we'll start at the elementary and work our way up. It's going to take some time. A lot of teachers and counselors and so on put a lot of effort into putting this together on behalf of the district for the board and the community to hear all about the work that's been done. So that being said, thank you, Susie, for starting us off. You're up.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Really excited to be here and share some of the wonderful things that are going on behalf of our students. So Christy, if you don't mind moving to the next slide for me. We talk a lot about a social emotional learning, but wanted to just provide a very brief definition for folks. And what really stands out for me as we look at this is it's about helping our students to not only acquire, but learn how to apply those skills around social emotional learning that are, of course, all about developing that healthy self. And this goes into some of what that looks like. One of the things that I want to make a point of saying too is it doesn't mean it's a purchased program, right? There are programs out there, but really it's about what are we doing on a day-to-day basis to support the healthy and strong development of our children. And that intentional, consistent integration of social emotional learning is really where it's at. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you don't mind going to the next slide, we're going to talk about some of the district-wide programs as well as grade level specific. The Mckinney-Vento program, we're so fortunate to have the amazing people that provide that program to our students who are in some way experiencing homelessness. We have two amazing women that offer those programs. Lindsay Hensrud is our K-6, and then later on we'll hear about Patty's work at the 712. Lindsay supports approximately 20 students, and it's all about, as we say, relationship, relationship, relationship. She connects with these children in really powerful ways, builds trust with them, and then helps them with their academic work, as well as having some fun together and just helping them feel really connected. She's amazing, and the kids love her, and she loves what she does. And then serving as that really important connection between the school and families, because she builds that trust with families as well. All right, next slide, please. Kindergarten, so much fun to watch kindergartners practicing their SEL skills. Whole body listening, if you've ever heard that term. This is woven throughout, but it starts in kindergarten, that idea of, really using our eyes and our ears and our heart and our brain to learn how to be together, that community circles together. A lot of our equity work, as well as a lot of our social emotional work at K4 is around children's literature. We use a lot of stories to teach some of these concepts to children. We're just starting with our zones of regulation, which helps children begin to talk about and identify how they're feeling. That's a really important strand you'll see as well, that from the beginning, how are you feeling today? How are you doing? That ability to identify how we're feeling is such a critical piece. And we're going to talk more about, but again, this starts in kindergarten, that idea of growth mindset and the power of yet that weave all throughout that development of a child. Next slide, please. First grade, again, a lot of literature. As reading is happening, that beginning of writing and reading, and SEL is really integrated into that whole literacy experience for younger children. Lots of morning questions and conversations, a lot of breathing exercises. I've had a lot of fun. Michelle's Assette's classroom, when child's struggling, let's breathe. Let's take a minute and breathe, and teaching those strategies. And again, that idea of sharing, group games, and connection. Next slide, please. Second grade is using a program called Sanford Harmony. And these are conversation cards that you can see the topics here. And these are used regularly throughout our Zoom. All of these strategies I'm talking about are happening now while we're in our remote setting, as well as in person when we're back together. Social Zooms, all of our teachers are offering optional Zooms that are Fun Friday, just opportunities to connect, because as the children get older too, that social piece is so critical to them. Lots of birthday celebrations, again, the use of the harmony cards, the use of children's literature. And second grade is working on getting some interest clubs together, which we're excited about. Next, please. Third grade, I'm really focusing on this idea of the power of yet. I can't do this yet, right? I don't know how to do this yet, but really instilling that idea of we're getting there and we're working towards it. Again, that sharing and connection, you're going to see a lot of similar strands. Teachers all invite students to stay after on Zoom for one-on-one or small group conversation. If somebody needs to talk, if somebody identifies they're having a bad day, always invited to stay and talk. And then second grade does a whole Friday series on specific topics around empathy, perseverance, all those important elements. Next, please. Fourth grade, again, children are getting older, that's social time. I'm using breakout rooms for collaborative work. That's been really important in fourth grade. Again, this idea of the moods. How are you feeling? How do you identify where you're at? It's okay. Sometimes we have bad days, right? And being able to acknowledge that and move through it. Lots of connection with games, conversation starter cards, those morning meetings in the Zooms, and again, opportunities to stay and connect. Next, please. Really proud of our mini hybrid program. I want to give a big shout out to Amanda Potter. Amanda has come in as a leave replacement school social worker, and she's really leading our mini hybrid program with the support of Craig Stelling. And really that whole program, while we know the academic piece is so important, having those students, 33 students in person, has been so important. They love it so much. I can't even tell you how happy they are to be there and be together. So big shout out to those folks. And next, my last slide. Just a couple other quick things. We have been very fortunate. The Whidbey Community Foundation provided us with a grant that has allowed us to provide extra hours for one of our student support paraeducators. She's working with 14 students a week after her normal job. Again, providing that one-on-one and small group collaboration, connection, academic, and social emotional work. Readiness to Learn, they're always there for us. Regular grade level team meetings where we're looking at students' academic progress and social emotional. We do that consistently. And then our work with CADA. They provide us with our Safe Hands and Caring Words bullying prevention presentations. We've always done that live, but we'll be doing that remotely this spring. So I think that is my last slide. I'm going to ask you to oh no, one more. Partners for Youth Empowerment. I'm sure many of you know about these wonderful folks. They received a grant also from the Whidbey Community Foundation to come in and work with our teachers around what kind of trauma are we going to be looking at after our kids have been out of school for almost a year, and how are we going to support those kids as they do begin to come back into the program. So we're super excited. I've been planning with them and really excited about this work that's coming up. And I really think that was my last one. Do you mind going forward one more? Yes. All right. Thank you so much. Happy to turn it over to Jeff Fankhauser.
Good evening, everybody. I'm excited to share a little bit about the happenings at the South Campus. One of the really unique things about our school district is having an entire building devoted to the 5th and 6th grade. In addition to, we house our SWA model, which is South Whidbey Academy for grades K through 6. And I also want to highlight some of the other work we're doing with SWAP this year, where we have a parent partnership with families that would like to take that lead in the education of their children. And so we have really 3 components of schooling going on at the South Campus. And I like to think of it as the early middle school, because we transition to a middle school model really for 5th and 6th grade. So kids are starting to rotate classes. They have schedules. They have multiple teachers in their daily life. And we focus around our positive actions of Whidbey students, which is our reward system, where we basically catch students doing the right thing, following our ROAR code, which stands for respect and observing the rules and acting responsibly and being ready to learn. These are all important social emotional components, and students earn tickets and ways to get into the drawing for rewards. And ultimately, it's a way to just recognize the amazing work that they're doing. Students also monthly are nominated by our teachers for our Cougar Pride Awards, which basically students in 5th and 6th grade are nominated by their teachers for their amazing work and how they have roared during the month. And some of the other things that we have going on for social emotional learning, of course, we have been continuing since March last year, our virtual assemblies, trying this year to get students more involved in leading those assemblies. And the last few, we've had quite a few student leaders stepping up from our associated student body to participate as leaders. For example, in our Martin Luther King assembly, we had just a lot of students involved, and it was really, really powerful to see. Of course, we meet with our leadership students in our ASB. Mrs. Hunter leads that process, and students are able to step into leadership roles in the building, both virtually and, of course, when we're back in person. one of the things we were really proud of this last semester was our school-wide community service projects, where we partnered with the middle school to do a canned food drive for Thanksgiving, and then again partnered with Holiday House to bring in items for families that could use them during the holidays. I also want to talk about our restorative circle problem solving. So we're moving in a direction of conflict resolution, which involves basically bringing students together, looking through who has done harm, who has, what can we do to work through those together as a group to better understand the harm that was done, and then how to repair it as we move forward. The staff engaged in this year the distance learning playbook book study, which one of the things you'll find if you look at that book, a lot of districts sought out a book that would help to support distance learning during this, of course, amazing year that we've had of remote learning. And one thing you'll learn is relationship. Just not only is it important for our students, it's important for the adults, it's important for the teachers, it's important for the families. And so we always try to focus our social emotional learning around building those relationships. One of the ways that we did that recently is we gave students the opportunity to send Valentines to each other. We mailed those from the school. We did that during our material handling event where students came in and got their books for second semester, and they were able to send out random acts of kindness videos to each other. And the deadline for that, students, if you're watching, is next Friday. So send in your video so that we can get those random acts of kindness to share with each other. Christy, if you would mind switching to the next slide, please. I'll go on since I can see it. There it is. So one of the keys to our social emotional component is we do a lot of small group work, both with academics, but also with social skills. We do those in our homerooms through themes and discussions. We frequently have homeroom competitions, door competitions. Over in the virtual environment, we've done those with each homeroom setting up video competitions where the different homerooms will throw out a challenge, and the students will meet that challenge together as a homeroom. Of course, we have individual and small group counseling, which happens face-to-face and in Zooms, depending on the students that may or may not be on campus. We have peer social Zooms that are happening at basically through the homeroom model, but in all of the classrooms. Many teachers are holding office hours for their students to get that extra academic support that they need, or just a place to come and talk and chat about what's going on in their lives. And some of the things happening in SWA happen with greetings and learning greetings from each other, sharing thinking questions, sharing family activities, and of course, their monthly assignments that they're all doing. And who doesn't like a good, solid student game day? Those are super fun and engaging. Super proud of our current mini hybrid program that we have going on in the Cougar Den. Mr. Sage and Mrs. Balastrace have been leading that. We also have, in my role as a special ed director, we have students at each of the campuses, basically to support those interventions, if at all possible, that we can. So we have about 15 fifth graders and 15 sixth graders coming Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday at South Campus. And then we have our special education students across the district also attending either 2 or 4 days a week. So those are kind of the core components of the South Campus. Couldn't be any more excited to work with that group. And I'm going to pass on to Mr. Swanson.
Actually, I don't think this is my slide. That one is. Look at that guy. Welcome to Cougar Country. So I just love this picture. I just thought I'd put it up there as the as setting the stage. Next slide, please. So in 7th and 8th grade, you're going to start hearing a lot of similarities, and I too want to emphasize the idea that we're focused on building relationships. We have worked the last 4 years to build and expand on our health courses, and this year we have what we call health and wellness. And inside these classes, students will get health modules, and inside those modules we have lessons that are geared towards social emotional components. Emmy Atwood is in charge of the health courses, and she does a phenomenal job. And I've been a part of observing some of those classes, and I just am so thankful that we have an individual, an adult in there that can handle such a at times very difficult subject matter with such grace and ease. She really works hard to give the students an opportunity to express feelings and ask questions, and it's a safe place. That's geared with our social emotional part of that class, another piece. So basically it's 2 parts. There's an hour long. The first half is the health component, and the second half is geared towards our book studies for each grade level. Our 7th grade is working from a book called, this book is Anti-Racist, and the 8th graders are working from a book called Stamped. James Baird leads that discussion, and he provides prompts that get conversation flowing. And that's also a place where kids have the opportunity to ask questions, express curiosity, and basically just talk with one another in an open dialogue. Our focus is to provide spaces where kids have adults who are trusted, and they believe in and feel comfortable with someone to turn to, if you will. So let me see. We're partnered with county services. They're another integral part. And if we notice a student that is in need, we work to provide wraparound services for that student and family. Next slide, please. Our teachers, I am absolutely impressed with our teachers. I think the thing that I genuinely appreciate the most is their genuine love and care for the kids. I get emails on a fairly consistent basis from teachers asking, inquiring about students, if they've noticed a pattern or observing a behavior that is out of the norm, then they inquire about it, and we work to see if we can alleviate any issues. Our teachers are building relationships, and they're used to doing that in the form of a classroom where you are face to face, and they've had to modify their practice, and they've done an excellent job. They're building relationships even in this bizarre world of Zoom, and again, my appreciation is just elevated. Our teachers do a check-in constantly, and this looks different in each classroom because it basically is tied to their practice, and there's nothing canned about it. Some teachers will have activities. Some teachers just have an open dialogue. I was part of an observation in one class where a teacher just asked simply, hey, put something in the chat or say out loud something that you are grateful for today, or what did you do this last weekend that you would consider taking care of yourself. The goal behind these check-ins, one, to connect, but also to help the kids, reflect on the positive components that are taking place, because I think we get inundated with a lot of negative, and so the teachers are working hard to help students reflect and self-regulate. They utilize their time. We have an hour block, and the first first half hour is geared towards the lesson of the day, if you will. And the second half is geared towards small group instruction. And that time can be used for targeted academics, as well as checking in with students and seeing how they're doing. Next slide, please. Our grade level teams meet twice a month, and in those meetings, we talk about observations and behaviors of students. And if there are student concerns or student issues, we try to create a plan of attack, basically. How can we wrap around that student and that family to provide services to help them get back on track if needed. From these meetings, we've created lists of students that we feel are in need, and we've had 7th and 8th grade kids, small groups, coming into the building twice a week, and it's pretty interesting to watch how they get just super excited about being in school. It's not necessarily the norm, so we're loving that. Teachers will pop in. Those who are in the building will pop in and visit with the kids and provide academic support, and again, just make connections. It's all about, and you've heard it before in the last two principals presentations, it's all about relationship. We've done periodic site visits. So just recently, we have students who, if they're completely off the radar and we still have not been able to contact them, we're constantly calling, we're constantly emailing, and if we still can't hear from them, then we go out and try to actually make connections, which has been really a positive thing. During those times, if we make connections, we work on ways to get that student back in school and re-engaged. Again, Mrs. Hunter, our counselor, the teachers, our staff, they continue to make phone calls and inquire, all about making connection and trying to keep the students engaged in the school environment. We will meet with parents, and we have met with parents. We continue to do that with parents as a grade level team, and discuss what's taking place at home, how we can support, and what are the needs of the student. And we modify our teaching, we modify our practices, basically in hopes to, again, re-engage the student. Next slide, please. And we have activities, of course. We're working on getting athletics. They'll be in the form of intramurals. We recently had Erin Jones, who spoke to our student body and also spoke to our student leaders in a separate meeting. And she, if you haven't heard her speak, she's inspirational and uplifting. And her message to our students was centered around humanity, humility, and history. And I think that our student body got a lot from that experience. I've talked about the book study with the 7th and 8th graders. We have a book study for the staff as well. We're doing Stamped, and our students are in ASB. We have student-led ASB. We have Cougar Pride assemblies, and we have the school-wide service projects. Jeff talked about the food drive. That was an incredible experience. We had people drive through and drop off food, and the amount of generous donations was just inspiring to me. We have homeroom challenges as well. We are moving to have that be student-centered. ASB is going to take that over. Our most recent was jokes, and we have a list of jokes that were from the kids that we will be presenting to the student body soon. It seems silly, but I'll tell you what, it provides a smile and a laugh, which is a good thing. Middle schoolers are funny. They're just an awesome group of people. We have home visits. We did this in the spring where we presented awards, and we will be continuing to do that this year. And we also, of course, have birthday celebrations. And so as you know, again, you've heard some similarities. It's all about the idea of building relationships and trying to keep kids connected to the school environment. And I just want to say before I move on, again, I give my highest appreciation to our our staff, and that's everyone, teachers, secretaries, counselors, custodial, food workers, everyone is just doing a phenomenal job of really trying to care for kids and their well-being. So thank you. And I believe that is it for me.
That's me. I was going to do the McKinney-Vento one. So Christy, can you go back to the one before 5-6, please? That one. Perfect. I'm going to talk a little bit about the McKinney-Vento support services that is pretty much overseen by Patty Maddox. She's a great person. She's finishing up her student teaching, and she works with our students who are experiencing homelessness. We have about 42 right now. Those seniors, she prioritizes helping to get them prepared for their postgraduate plans, applying for FAFSA, applying for college applications, tracking down documents that those students need to get to their next step. 16 have demonstrated significant struggle with attendance, engagement, and now 15 are engaged in managing course loads at the start of second semester. Her communication and supports of those students is admirable. She's driving to meet students to give them hotspots. She's checking in on them on the weekends. She's helping them apply for jobs. So nothing goes above and beyond Patty when it comes to getting a student connected and getting them some of the things that they need. So that is one of the ways that we are supporting our students that are experiencing homelessness. And now that I've winged that one, I'll go back to what I planned. Thank you. These photos are from the fall. We did a drive-through welcome back to school event. And you'll see alongside behind some of our students there, our staff, we had students coming in and just inviting them into the school year, even though we were at a distance. On the computer, we still saw each other, and we're starting to try to make those connections and bring together some of that school pride that we're going to be bringing. We still have, and we're going to maintain and reemphasize that as we go. Next slide, please. So some of the things that we're doing to support our students social emotionally, there's a lot of program opportunities, and sometimes I worry our students get flooded with too much information. And so we're trying to pivot to find ways to better communicate opportunities and engage students into something that's going to help them find their niche. I work on the student support team, which has 14 staff members. Some are guests that join in when we have a student of additional concern. We meet weekly. Of all of our students, there's about 120 that are receiving or under the support of multiple needs or whatever their needs are supported and discussed, and action plans for each student each week. So that hour and a half is jam-packed. We have a community services liaison, mental health coordination, and support services while we're there. So when a student is brought to our attention, we look at what the needs are and coordinate and find services. I'll say that there's something special about seeing a mental health expert providing services to a student in about 39-degree weather outside. But the needs are there, the students are seeking it, and we're able to provide that. Invest Ed is it's a nonprofit organization. They take funds from our larger organizations around the region like Microsoft, Boeing, and they funnel that money into immediate needs, whether that's school fees, whether that's personal needs. So it's a broad spectrum of finances. So some of it that we've had has been allowing us to give access to some licensing fees or additional apps to help students with their learning, SAT testing fees like that. Anything underlined is a hyperlink, so I try to give you access to additional information if you were curious what that is. We have our lunch program through WIN that supports and feeds our students. I'm somebody who believes in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and on that most bottom tier are those basic needs, and we need our students fed. So we see plenty of buses and people out there driving to get our students fed because we need full bellies so that they are engaged with us. We have tech support. Like I said, we're getting cell phones, Wi-Fi with would be gig. We're getting hotspots, one-on-one Chromebooks. So every student has the opportunity to have a school Chromebook. So we're equalizing and bringing some more equity into technology since we're not all face-to-face. We had a teacher drive up to, I want to say Concrete or Birdsview this fall to drop off some tech materials to students. So you're seeing that teachers are reaching out and getting kids the materials that they need. I talked a little bit about McKinney-Vento a little bit. My numbers are off compared to what our current numbers are. SWA is our South Whidbey Academy. It's our support for at-risk students. This number is increasing because this last school year has been a challenge. Each time we feel a student is going to transition into SWA, they are welcomed with open arms. I had to shoot off an email last week, and about an hour later, Charlie was meeting with that student in person safely to coordinate a plan. They're looking at post-grad options and ways to get the students successfully through school to get the skills they need to figure out what they're doing next. There's a lot of in-person opportunities with SWA and with staff. Those numbers are going to continue to grow, and SWA will continue to support them. Readiness to Learn, working with Gail Lavasser, provides support for our students and families. Some tutoring opportunities are available. She's quick to help coordinate to find tutoring supports in a variety of academics and needs. And so a lot of students are served through those services. Forefront, I believe we had a training last week for parents in the community remotely, but I think that is also a bright light in this circumstance, that more of us are getting access to things maybe we couldn't otherwise attend. It's suicide education and prevention. It's training for staff, parents, guardians, and students as well. It's run through UW. I believe we're on our 4th or 5th year of it, and staff has a training on it, I believe, next week. The Student Voice Project is kind of under the umbrella under Forefront. It's a video program, and it's allowing students to essentially document the experiences that they're having right now. They have mentors, they have filmmakers, all in support of this, really allowing them to channel their creativity and share the message and the experience that they're having. And that started in the fall, and it culminates in the spring, and we'll get to see some documentation of their student voice throughout their experience as a teen in a pandemic. Our staff book study, we just had our 3rd one. We had a smaller staff book study, and then we expanded it to our entire staff. It's called Cultivating Genius. It's a text that looks at equity frameworks for cultural responsiveness. We're having a lot of interactive dialogue among staff members, thinking about how we can reshape our classrooms to be more culturally aware and bring in different perspectives and lenses. It's been a really great challenge for us to think about the needs of our students and how our classroom supports that, whether that's remote or in person. Our library has expanded a lot this past year. They did a complete overhaul of some of the materials available, and they've tried to meet some needs or requests of students looking at concepts in equity, cultural diversity, LGBTQIA. They want to see populations represented beyond what our dated library was having, and so we're meeting those needs. Next slide, please. Mr. Swanson had talked about Erin Jones a bit. I think the biggest highlight was when we had her in January. She met with a group of student leaders. It was optional, and I think we had about 80 students there. And her engagement in helping them to get some clarity and understanding and some motivation in how to bring cultural responsiveness to their school here was pretty impactful. I still have students talking about the conversations that were held there. Our student virtual classroom calming room, this is a great site put together by our school counselors. It has all different varieties of ways to help students cope in different needs, whether they're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, bored. A lot of times I hear unmotivated. So this is a place where you can go and find a way to meet your needs. So in class, I think most every teacher shares this pretty regularly. It's in our Google Classrooms. You can go and you play around and you explore ways to help deal with what your need is. And I think right now, as our students' brains are developing, they're looking for ways to manage, and having access to places like this is a fun and unique way for us to kind of explore that with them. That goes along with our teacher resources and Zen room. This is put together by Ms. Chan, allowing us as teachers to keep our cup filled up so that we can continue to support our students, recognizing that this is an exceptionally unique time. So supporting us so that we can then support our students has been, it's a fun way to explore and try some new things for ourselves as well. I had Ms. Chan come into my classes in late fall, and she walked us through some mindfulness activities, and students and myself felt more calm and relaxed. And I've noticed some students, they were then sharing some strategies that they use in order to deal with the stressors that they're feeling of that we're in. We have advisories and office hours every Wednesday. Some of the areas we try to focus on are time management. A lot of times our structure of our day looks so different. We used to have 6.5, 7 hours devoted to school, and now that looks a little different for students. So they're struggling to manage their time well. So we're giving lessons and different strategies to help them do that. We're talking about career planning, SEL check-ins, strategies academically, and again, with that mental wellness. I think one of the most impactful ones we do, and I know a lot of different staff members do it a lot of different ways, pretty daily check-ins on social, emotional, how they're feeling, what they're grateful for, what their needs are, and planning and modifications to individual needs. I have some anecdotal information that I pulled some students on just to ask them what that looks like to them. And a lot of them were able to share examples of how a teacher was able to recognize when they had a need and how it was met. Academic modifications, as a staff, we looked at grading as a whole. And we talked about maybe some changes to our practices, rolling deadlines versus hard and fast deadlines, individualized modifications. We looked at the broad scope of everything, and then we looked at what our power standards focuses were, what really needs to be taught, how can we shape that in a distance learning model and still engage our students for their well-being. Grading modifications, teacher-student planning on academic needs, that kind of rolls back to that advisory office hours checking in. A lot of students have a lot of just informal plans with their teachers based on assignments and their needs. And then they take that and they get their modifications so that their needs are met and their academics are still met. We have 16 clubs that are unique and diverse, and there's a lot of, it's very interest-based. What I love about clubs here is they live and die by student interest. And I think this year's the fastest year we've had. I think we have 3 new clubs this year. So despite not being in building, we have students still meeting and engaging on a weekly basis in a variety of topics. Some that are thriving during this time are our mental health awareness club. So they're focusing on how to support themselves and then how to share that information out to their peers. Our social justice club, we work pretty closely with them in our USL program. And then our student wellness club, they're thinking about proactive ways to support not only their peers, but also their teachers. It was really pleasant to walk into school in December and I had a wellness gift from students. So they're recognizing and they're empathizing with the situations, showing us how they feel. We work with United Student Leaders. They're a program of students that are a partnership. They're bringing student voice to their concerns of what's going on in our school, and we work together collaboratively to take steps for improvement. Last time we met, we were approved for our ethnic studies and our environmental studies committees. We're looking for systemic change for equity. We're looking at how that's going to impact student wellness. And there's a lot of student voice involved in that. I think the root of this came from student voice. We have athletics that Mr. Lagerstedt could probably talk on. I have a lot of smiling students who are now back to practice and being around teammates and getting that physical movement that maybe they weren't feeling motivated to do otherwise. We have CADA, just like the mid-level, but topics at the 9-12 include healthy relationships and safe dating this year. And then I think most teachers have done in some different varieties, student or family delivery, whether it's food, materials, social emotional check-ins. It kind of looks different for every student. Those are always approved. But the idea is to reach out, connect, and show them in whatever means they need us is how we're getting there. We're bringing students furthest from educational justice to offering to work in the building for social, emotional, environmental, and academic supports. We have our South Movie Cares Coalition with our drug and alcohol education and prevention. And finally, we're increasing student activities as deemed safe and appropriate. And then I have one last slide. Christy, can you? Thank you. So I wanted to take the temperature of my students. So I just did a sampling of students in my class. I asked them a few questions and then I asked them anonymous, well, what do you want the community and the school board to know about how you're feeling supported this year? So this is just some data that they gave me. Again, this is just a sampling. It's not the entire school, but I felt allow the students to speak on their behalf and some components. So a question I asked was, what do you want the community to know about how you felt supported this year. And a couple I'll just highlight said, a positive aspect I want the community to know is that teachers have been trying their best to prioritize our mental health. It doesn't show through this, not all students. And I think the community and parents have a misconception of what it looks like, what distance learning looks like. I want the community to know that the teachers are trying their best, and this affects students in different ways. Other students said, teachers are incredibly flexible. They recognize when I haven't even realized I've fallen behind. They reach out, someone's there for me, they're connecting. It's been an extremely hard year for us and teachers. Teachers are supportive with late work, helpful because I'm stressed out. And then there's individual examples of teacher beyond teacher going above and beyond maybe what a typical, what it might look like behind in other circumstances of how they feel like they have been supported by a staff member or staff members this year. And I think we're back to Joe.
Thank you, Kayla. You did an outstanding job, and I think you'll be an amazing administrator. Thank you for spending time with us as an intern and as a teacher. We're lucky to have you. And I know Lagerstedt and Patton are lucky to have you because they're sitting back in their cushy chairs letting you do all the work tonight. Nice job, everyone. So, Brooke, I'd love to have the board ask any questions about what we're doing for social emotional support of our students and our staff. I throw it back to you.
Are there any questions from the board?
I think that I don't have any questions, but I just want to share that, I think this presentation shows how much care and consideration is going into helping and supporting students through this. And that is evident by the amount and every single program, every single class, check-in, book study, PD, all of those pieces are planning that people are doing on top of everything else. And I think that that just goes to show the dedication our staff has for our students.
Yeah, I would echo that. It's not a question, but it's just an expression of gratitude to those administrators who've shared. I just really appreciate hearing the number of programs and the care with which those programs are being run and delivered. And I also appreciated hearing that there is some attention to the risk of sort of information overload. And so finessing how these offerings are targeted to the students who can most benefit from them, that feels really valuable. And I do have one question for Jeff, if I may. I really appreciated the reference to the restorative circle focus. And this is a question not for me to ask you to answer right now, but for maybe you to hold going forward. And that is that work adequately resourced? Because I just know how healing it can be, but also how it's a paradigm shift. And so I would just like you to consider letting the board know in future if that's a program that needs to be resourced differently.
One of the things we did, thank you for that question, last year was we began using restorative circles as a component of some of our professional development. And not only did many paraeducators, but a lot of teachers went through restorative circle training, and we began to use that at the South Campus. We were using it, I think, at the middle school and high school as well, but as a component to our discipline to try to get away from over disciplining, if you will. So it was a way to reduce our overall discipline numbers, but more importantly, to engage the students in ways to resolve their conflicts together and find solutions together. You're right, it does take a lot of time. So if you have students in conflict, the process of a restorative circle can take an hour and so that's time out of a class to do that. But Mrs. Hunter and I, who she's our counselor, we felt important enough about it that we put it on our calendar twice a week so that we would have the opportunity to pull kids in for restorative circles, to meet their needs. Of course, this year with remote learning, we've had less of a need for it to do those in-person opportunities, but we have done them via Zoom. So thanks for the question.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that extra information.
And just Marnie, I'm not sure if you know, but we are also, as Jeff mentioned, it's happening at the 712 as well. And we have done training, and we have one person in particular whose majority of his time is spent doing the restorative work. So, but it is an important area that needs more. It always needs more attention. So.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll follow you up with that, Joe. If you remember, before COVID hit, we actually got to go and participate in the restorative circle a little bit there. Seabrook is nodding his head.
Right.
And in the restorative circle, information that we learned is how our discipline has decreased significantly because of the restorative circles. So this district does have information, Marnie, on that. And Joe can get that to you too, but it was pretty impressive stuff.
Great. I appreciate that. And as a newcomer to the board, I appreciate the retrospective about what I missed before my arrival. Thanks.
I am really looking forward to getting back to the school visits as soon as it's safe for us to do so, because that was, as Damien was mentioning, that was a fantastic experience for me. Anne or Jordan, do you have any questions or comments you'd like to add? Nothing from Anne? Jordan?
I don't have any questions, but I think that a lot of this stuff is not really seen from a student perspective or like the community members. So I think it's just really interesting to see everything laid out into this presentation. And it just gives, like everyone said, a greater gratitude.
I think it's a really valuable comment, noting that it's hard to see from ground level everything that's going on, and seeing it laid out is always awesome. Yeah, thank you, Jordan. I was curious if any of the principals had any sneak peeks about things they're particularly excited about upcoming. And I haven't prepped any of the principals for this or Joe, so I apologize for the surprise. And if there's nothing that you feel ready to share upcoming, I completely understand it, but it popped into my head as I was listening to this.
Just real quick, thanks for asking, Brooke. We're working on getting some enrichment courses going, both remote and some outdoor enrichment programs. We're still in the building stage, but some partnership with Snow Owl Libraries and some other groups. So we're very excited about that.
And Brooke, I would add that a lot of planning is going into the potential of moving to more in-person hybrid learning. And teachers are super excited about the opportunity to meet many of them in person for the first time this school year. And what a difference school has been, of course, this year. So at the South Campus, we have an orientation coming up as decisions around the dates for that coming back. And so for me, the excitement around the buzzing of students on campus is something that I'm looking forward to, and our staff are really looking forward to. In our mini hybrid opportunity, many of you might have seen the post on Mr. Lavasser's science class yesterday, and how just even a few kids being able to do aquariums outside, and doing that science work in person sure makes a difference for social emotional needs. And hopefully we can do it safely, and we're all looking forward to that opportunity.
Mine's gonna piggyback off of that, but mine's pretty simplistic. It's just the idea of having the energy of young people back in the hallways and the classrooms. That is an absolute blessing. So yeah, looking forward to that.
I don't really have any new information that wasn't said, but our staff is just, we're dying to see our kids. We can't wait. And it's really, we're optimistic right now. Athletics are starting. Once our kids get back in the hybrid situation, we're going to be able to do some more modified activities, some traditional things. And again, we're just excited to get things going.
Speaking of athletics, Paul, You actually hired some coaches and we got some seasons starting.
Yeah, as my colleagues will say, I've spent a lot of time in athletic directors meetings. We have done a lot of scheduling and rescheduling. I am absolutely jazzed that we're going to start athletics. Football first day of turnout was today, and our first day for the other fall sports, girls soccer, boys tennis, boys and girls cross country and volleyball will be Monday. And like every first day of fall sports turnout, we're expecting some snow, and so we're really excited about it and getting some opportunity. I'm working on some opportunities, maybe live stream some games for our community. We will have some limitations because of COVID, but I'm excited about our kids being out there wearing the blue and white and fighting like a falcon.
Thank you for thinking ahead on live streaming. I think that's a fantastic idea. Go Falcons. I've got a couple of questions here from the community that I'll read, and then we'll see if there are any further board comments or questions. So Jennifer Haney, for Kayla, how did you select the sampling group of students in the last slide you showed? How many students were sampled?
Great question. As a stats brain, any of my students so we just started second semester. I just asked students enrolled in any of my courses, plus my advisory, if they would be willing to answer 3 or 4 questions. So I think it was around 80, so 15% of the school.
Thank you. Gwendy Hastings, are all those things for the various grades sound great? Do the staff feel that they are meeting the social emotional needs of the students? Also, will there be social Zoom starting for the younger students?
I want Susie to take that one.
I'd be happy to answer that. Yes, in fact, I met with Amanda Potter today, who is our school social worker, and she has a series of lunch bunch that will be for the kids, some groups, social groups live when our kids come back in person. She's also going to launch a series of remote social groups as well. So yes, lots of great things in plans right now.
To add to that, Susie and I keep trying to coordinate some high school mentors to work with some elementary level students. Timing of a high school schedule versus elementary plus Zoom is a challenge, but we've got 3 or 4 that we think are going to be lined up to be able to provide some of those social interaction. It could be academic, social, and I think on both ends there's a lot of benefit to a mentorship. So we're hoping to make that structured in, and then once we're in hybrid, we'll relook at what that looks like.
Gwendy says, awesome, Susie, thank you. Another one from Gwendy, different question. Joe asked at the end of the last meeting for people to write in with ideas and suggestions on ways the district can meet the students' social emotional needs. Did any parents write in with some ideas? We'd love to hear ideas on ways we can reach our students' needs.
That's a great question, Gwendy. I got some emails, but they didn't have ideas. There were actually I shouldn't say that. I got some very, I got some emails that I'd rather not repeat, but I also got some 2 emails that offered some suggestions. And certainly Gwendy offered several suggestions, and we're meeting next week. So we've incorporated most of them, what parents had suggested we are doing. One of the things that did come in that's actually a great suggestion is how we can, as school folks, give parents suggestions on what they can do that they may not be doing to support their students' social emotional well-being. Parents may be doing this, but creating a pod for their children, doing a social Zoom from home with children. So those are some of the things, but we were looking at putting together a kind of a list of things that might be helpful for parents to do with their students.
I think that'd be fantastic. I know that my preschooler loves FaceTime with her friends.
And I also received some anecdotal reports from students around what they feel has supported their social emotional needs. One student reported that there was a program called, or I believe it was a class, an elective called No Child Left Inside, but it really felt like a sort of a group connection time that was really supportive of well-being. And another student reported that small group breakouts where there's enough relationship among the students for people to feel safe turning on their cameras has been a place to connect. And then I also heard a student talk about the one-on-one trusted staff member that reaches out each week that really helps build a sense of having somebody see and hear their personal needs. And I'll just add that this feedback came from people at the middle school and high school levels.
Okay. Thank you, Marnie, for that. Are there any other comments or questions? I don't have any more from the community. I'm curious if there are any more from the board. Here, one's coming in now. Kimberly Taxney, what about those kids who have friend pods, extra help from an outside teacher or tutor, and are already seeing a therapist, but simply need to return to school to thrive mentally, emotionally, and academically? Any suggestions? I think that's a good transition, and hopefully we can address that also as we move on to the next topic, which is the move towards return to face-to-face. But I definitely think that there's something to address there as a transition also.
Okay, do you want me to just move on, Brooke?
Yeah, if you can use that as a transition, if possible, that would be fantastic.
I can use that as a transition for sure.
Figured you could.
So I actually am excited to present to the board tonight because COVID has cooperated for the first time in a long time. So I'm gonna move through this and talk about where we are and where we're headed. And once again, we do this with the priority of our safety for students and staff as first and foremost. And also making sure we're providing an education for our students that's robust. So right now, and since the beginning of school, kindergarten has been in, they started at 2 days a week. Now they're at 4, they've been at 4 days a week for quite some time. So our kindergarten students are experiencing school. It's not a full day. It's 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. And our students with special needs have been in, and you've been hearing about what principals have referred to as mini hybrids, or the students who have been attending school because they were furthest from educational justice. We are and continue to be ready to bring our students back in logistically. So we had some confusion at our last meeting regarding our metrics, and I want to be really clear. It's Island County metrics, and this is from the Department of Health, and this is what we are looking at in terms of where we are currently and what metrics we need to meet to remain in the moderate range. We all want to be in the low range, but right now we're in moderate. And we had approached high, but we are in moderate. We are solidly in the moderate range right now. So here is the COVID activity, and you can see over time, for the 4th week in a row, we are trending down.
I'm not seeing this screen share.
You don't see it? It doesn't say Island County metrics?
Nope.
Oh dear. Is anyone seeing this? Did you see any slides?
No slides yet.
Oh dear, I've been talking through slides that aren't there. Let me try again. I am so sorry, folks.
Well, thus far we had covered things that we've talked about at previous ones, but you got to the numbers, so I wanted to make sure we had the slides.
Oh dear. Well, let's try again. How about now?
It's starting up now.
So sorry. Thank you for letting me know. I'm just talking along like I'm looking at them. Okay, so this is what I was referring to. Here is the moderate range that we need to be in. And we're going to go through the metrics that are listed here in the next couple of slides. So for moderate, we need to be between 50 and 350 in terms of cases per 100,000, positivity rate between 5 and 10, and we need to see a decreasing trend in cases and in hospitalizations. This is the high range. We haven't been there. We haven't been in the high range as a county. Certainly our region that we are part of is, but that doesn't apply to schools reopening. So here is the metric I was just referring to. This is the Island County metrics. And you can see that since the beginning of January, we have trended down every week. And this is just a trend line showing that same information. So really pleased with the bounce back in the metrics. The other thing we have to look at, as you saw in my last slide, is the positivity rate. Here's our positivity rate. It's certainly between the 5 and 10 that it's indicating. And this is the hospitalization rate for Island County. So it's quite low. One of the things that, and I talk with the health department, if you've been following these meetings, I talk with them every Wednesday. And one of the things that, particularly in Island County, we need to be aware of is the limited hospital availability. So that has an impact. And one of the things that keeps getting talked about is the North region, and that we are Island County and therefore doing very well as a county, but we're part of this North region. And I'm sure you saw that in the newspaper. And a lot of that has to do with our ability to get hospital care should the need arise. And the ICU beds are not reported by Whidbey Health. They're not part of this system. And that's, and I'm paraphrasing, but essentially anything very serious gets transferred out of Whidbey Health. So that's why they're part of a bigger system for the availability, though they do have some ventilators if necessary. So this is the regional data. And we talked about this last time. This again is old data. They only update it every 2 weeks. And I'm only showing you this so that you can see that even in that data, it's high, but it's starting to trend down in our region. And these two middle ones are important for us to be looking at as a community, not as a school and whether or not we open, but just the trend in hospital admission rates and the ICU capacity for our area. But again, it's there and it's starting to trend down, which is really good news. So again, in order to open by the governor's proclamation, we have to meet that data point that I showed you, and we have to be able to mitigate the spread in school. So we have to be logistically ready. I walked through all of our readiness the last time we met. In short, we have to require everybody to wear face covering. And if you take a look at the New York Times today, as a matter of fact, if you wear a properly fitting cloth face mask, and especially if you wear two, you're 97% unlikely to get COVID or to transmit COVID. So masks are really important. Reducing or eliminating visitors and volunteers from campus, no unnecessary personnel, essentially. And that's hard, right? We rely on our volunteers. We love having visitors. It's going to be especially difficult when people want to spectate because even at sporting events, there's going to be limited ability to do that. Maintaining our distance, floors are marked, chains are in hallways to make sure kids are staying on the appropriate side of the chain. And we're going to have markers on the floor and outside on the ground. These top three things are those things that are going to make us successful. So principals will be working with those families of students who are returning and doing orientation and making it very clear that these are not areas where we can afford for people to not behave appropriately. So for example, if a student or a staff member refuses to wear a mask, that's a problem. We can't support a student at school who can't wear a mask unless they're a student with a diagnosed special need and we make other accommodations. So that's a really important piece for the safety of everyone. Certainly protecting staff and students at higher risk. We have a few staff who will be taking leave, and we have some students we know who will not return because they don't want to take the risk. This is another one, busing, the transportation of students to school. It's transportation will be available, but it would be wonderful, and we are encouraging people to transport their own students. It's another level of safety. Our buses will be following the Department of Health guidelines. You know, we'll work to have students in the same household sit together. We'll work to keep students separated. There is no maximum for a bus, but we're going to try really hard to keep our buses no more than half full. But part of the way that will happen is because folks will be dropping their students off at school if they can. We are grouping students, particularly at the elementary school, in cohorts, and we're going to maintain those cohorts. And that's not only for the safety of the students and staff, but it's in the event there is a case of COVID, we'll be able to do the contact tracing. And once again, close contact, when one has a mask and stays 6 feet apart, that eliminates close contact. So that's, again, what we'll be working on. There'll be a lot of student instruction as we come back. Then, of course, hand washing, sanitizing, cleaning, disinfecting. And I talked about ventilation and having air purifiers in every room. We certainly are already planning how we're going to bring staff back as needed for custodial service, et cetera. So we've had some staff who've been on leave, and as we bring students back, we bring staff back.
Dr. Mocher, just a quick question. What's our stance between masks and face shields? Are they the same, or does it have to be a mask?
It has to be a mask. You can wear a face shield in addition, but there must be a mask covering the nose and mouth. And with for some teachers who work directly with students with disabilities in particular who are unable to wear masks, they are advised to wear, and we have protective equipment. The school has protective equipment for our staff. So for example, if they need a KN95 and a face shield, it's available for them. But that's the kind of logistical work we have done to gather all of that so that we have it available for staff. So the model, again, on the left here, you can see, just reiterating how we have to behave masked at all times. The hybrid model will be 2 days a week on site for approximately 4 hours. Again, cohorted at the, actually K through 4, but cohorted 1 through 4. At the 5-6 level, it's going to be a pod of about 40 students because students will still move between teachers. But again, they have mitigation plans in place for how to do lunch and how to move students between classes and so on to limit contact. You'll start to see outdoor tents and other kinds of coverings so that we can spend more time outdoors when the weather is conducive to that. 7-12, again, students will be changing classes. So, you know, we want our folks who decide to come back to face-to-face to come in eyes wide open, knowing what students will be doing and that they'll be changing classes and so on. Classes will certainly be smaller. There'll be 6 feet of distance on all sides for students in classrooms. We have moved desks out. We have, you know, it will look different. So right to the recommendations, we are looking at, we have staff ready to teach. A few have been able to remain remote, and some will take leaves. We don't have exact leave requests yet. People are still, some are on the fence, but people will make choices, and we have some subs lined up in the event that teachers take leave. And just to be clear, our metrics right now are steady and they're declining, but should they worsen, should we move into that high level, that red level on that chart, we'll stop. We won't reverse unless, you know, we're told by the governor again, but we will stop in our return until those numbers come back to the moderate range. But here's the expectation. We expect to be returning, doing orientation next week, beginning at the lowest level grade levels. And principals are in charge of these orientations. And as they get closer to the return date, families will hear, they'll be making their definite choice. Yes, I'm returning. So that, you know, families will get that opportunity. One of the things that if a family chooses to return, we're going to accommodate. If they choose to then drop back to remote, we can always drop back to remote. What we can't do is have someone choose remote and then say, you know, I decided I want to come back now. They'll end up being a waiting list because class sizes are limited right now, right? So we can only have, let's say, 12 in a room. So we're going to do the best we can to accommodate. And right now we think we can accommodate all those who have requested, but that'll come. So ready to return the 22nd of February, grades 1 and 3 will be returning. And then March 1st, we'll have grade 2. And then March 8th, grades 4, 5, and 6. And then March 15th, grades 7 through 12. That is our plan at this point. We need time in between because we want to be sure that we're instructing students on what it's going to take. There'll be very specific plans. For example, at the 712 building, there'll be an orientation done by the 7 through 12 administrators, talking about which doors, which grade levels are going to enter, what's it going to be like when you enter, what health attestation do you need to do, what's the process. So those are the kinds of things that are required for orientation. We're already doing those things at the elementary because they've been in session. But again, same thing. Where does first grade come in the building? Where will third grade come in the building? What bathrooms will we use? Which hallways do we walk down? What's the behavior necessary to maintain a mask and safe distance and so on? So it'll take some orientation for students to come back into that environment. I'm about to turn it to board discussion. So questions, comments. I couldn't be more pleased with the activity of disease declining so that we can get to this point.
I want to give serious props to you, Dr. Moshe, and the administration and the teachers and staff and everyone involved at every level in putting together this safe plan. You've done exactly what we've asked you to do, which I appreciate very much. Are there any questions from board members?
I just want to restate gratitude, echoing Brooke. This fills me with hope as a parent, and I really recognize that there's been that question around the metrics, and I'm heartened by the metrics and appreciative of your continued attention to them.
And I would be remiss if I You know, I have been leading the ship, but the folks working in the schools with kids remotely, the teachers have done a lot of work with their administrators to plan for this, to get ready for it, to put aside their fear. And I don't take that lightly. We all were hoping for a vaccine before we could return. We're still expecting vaccines to come, but we're ready to do this. And a lot of work has gone into getting us ready to bring our kids back. When the high school re-enters the building, it will have been 1 year since we went to remote. The only, and I think this is a silver lining, Brooke and I differ on this. He thinks it's a downer, but so when it snows and we can't transport kids, we will pivot to remote. So there is no need to have a snow day now that we know how to do remote school. So that will dampen the expectations of everybody who wears their pajamas inside out hoping for a snow day. Anyway.
Unless the snow brings trees down on the power lines.
There you go. And then we'll just have to make up the time. You're right. But so anyway, a little levity, but yeah, we're really looking forward to having kids back in the building. You know, it's not without caution. We have plans in place in the event that we have a case or in the event that we have illness. We don't want to use those plans, but we have them. So we're hoping that we're all as compliant as possible with masking and staying home if ill. So
I'd like to give another call out to Dr. Moshe and the leadership of the various unions in the district for working together collaboratively and cooperatively to get this settled and arranged. Yeah. Very pleased to see that. That's a wonderful indication of a good relationship going forward. We do have some questions from the community that I'll start in on. And any board members who want to ask further questions, please just do so. From Kim Taxney, why can't 712 start back when 1 to 4 does? Totally different campuses, etc. If admin and schools are ready, why are we waiting? If there are any pauses, our older kids will not get to return. Thank you.
So again, we are staggering the start because we want to make sure that we are really ready. And it says clearly, if we look back at this particular slide, it talks about prioritizing the elementary if they're not already receiving it, and middle school. And then if schools can demonstrate the ability to limit transmission in the school environment, add more schools, add more students. So we're, again, slowly and cautiously working to bring our students back and making sure that we have everything in place that we need to have in place. So we fully intend to see the numbers continue to decline based on the behavior that has been happening in Island County. And we anticipate that our high schoolers will be back on campus March 15th.
Joanne Welliver, I apologize if I mispronounced.
Did we all freeze or just Brooke?
Probably just me.
Okay.
Okay. Joanne Welliver, if the district does need to use substitute teachers to fill spots where teachers have chosen to take leave, will those subs be trained in all the online and personal training that the teachers have had since last March?
Well, we have subs that have been working in our schools and have been trained to use that, the technology already. So I'm not sure at this point how many folks will actually take a leave. So it's hard to answer that question, but yes, they'll be trained. I think Brooke froze again on us.
At the last meeting, it was pretty clearly communicated that many teachers were not comfortable coming back to the classroom yet. Has that changed?
I think folks have really been talking about it, and if I think people are still uncomfortable with coming back, but are ready to come back and are going to make the effort to make this work. We all would have preferred to have been able to have been vaccinated, but you know, it's reassuring to know that masks actually work, that distance actually works. And in addition, many of our staff are above the age of 65. So they were able to get at least the first vaccine and are working on their second one. And other folks have gotten vaccinated as well. So, you know, I think we're starting to see people a bit more comfortable. You know, nobody likes the fact that we're still dealing with COVID. It's not going to be comfortable until we have herd immunity. I've been told pretty clearly that even if they relax the distance rule by September, we're still going to be wearing masks, even if we can come back full time. So it's going to be a while before we're all absolutely comfortable.
So are parents going to be contacted in the process to bring students back? Questions about transportation? Do we know how many students will be needing transportation? Do we know how many students are returning? Will there be emails with more information and next steps? Are we going to be able to extend the day till 3 for parents that work?
The day will not be extended. The day will be 9 to 1. And yes, individual families are, if they haven't already been contacted, they will be contacted. We were waiting until this evening to see if the board agreed with the recommendation before we went full bore on all the planning, because it's really the board's decision-making that we're waiting on.
Plan or contingent on numbers again?
I think
Right now
Brooke
it's-
froze.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We
No,
missed the first half of that sentence, perhaps.
Yeah, sorry. We've got 2 people in this household trying to stream this on rural internet. So I apologize for freezing. Kathy Glaze, is this a solid plan or contingent on numbers again?
So as I said, it's a solid plan. If the numbers rise into the high level, then we pause. But this is our plan for now. I don't see the numbers rising, but COVID doesn't go by what, and he has a mind of its own. So right now, this is our plan based on where the metrics are now and the trends that we're seeing.
I think
Okay,
just to add to that, that we will continue to follow the Department of Health's guidelines and metrics. And so if the Department of Health changes their guidelines and metrics, we will adjust. But as long as they do not change those, we plan to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and again, the health department, I went through this with them on the phone this morning. We are solidly in that moderate range, and it's our plans are appropriate at this time, given the parameters we have today at this moment.
Okay, Bob O'Brien, quick questions. I understand the governor and others are saying it is safe to return to the classroom when following protocols.
So I'm gonna, are you back, Brooke?
Hopefully so. Question from Bob O'Brien, a couple of them. I understand the governor and others are saying it is safe to return to the classroom when following protocols. Do these studies' recommendations take into account new variant forms that are very infectious, UK, Brazil, South Africa, etc.? Also, I've heard double masking is now recommended. Is this something that will be enforced at school, or thank you?
So we know about the new variants. The governor, and it's not the governor's recommendations. We're following the Department of Health recommendations. The governor is certainly encouraging students back to school, but we are still following the science, and the science is from the Department of Health's recommendation. They have not come out with recommending that students and staff be double masked. I am hearing the same thing, and on a personal level, I certainly am wearing two, but it won't be required at school at this time. It's not something that's been, put into place or guidance provided to us by the Department of Health.
Bringing schools back in a particular order. I appreciate that, but prioritizing one age group isn't necessarily the right answer just because it says it on a slide. Just very worried about high schoolers' mental health and felt the need to ask. I truly hope those wanting to are able to return March 15th, so I wanted to ask. Thanks. We're very concerned about the mental health of all of our students, community members, staff, all of the above. I would emphasize that it's not just because the slide says it, it's because these are the recommendations that we're getting from the Department of Health. But no, I completely understand. For those that stay home, will they be receiving the Zooms at the same time in person does? How will they be handled from 5th to 12th grade?
So I'm going to, if someone is staying home and not coming in, they will be receiving Zooms from the classroom teacher at the high school level. The same classroom teacher they have now will be the same person doing the Zooms. At the elementary level, there may be some changes, but we're trying very hard not to change the current teacher for a student.
I wonder if, given Brooke's bandwidth challenges, I might read the next question. Would that be appropriate?
That would be great. Thank you, Marnie.
Great. We have a question from Nicole Midkiff. She asks, can you dive deeper into the high school class schedules? Why are the class times remaining shortened?
So the high school will do 4 periods a day. They will be 60-minute periods approximately. We are limiting the amount of time students spend in school on a daily basis to 4 hours. Again, this is to reduce the amount of time people are exposed to one another. This could change. We could lengthen the day, but at this time we're sticking with 60-minute periods.
Thank you. And at this time, I see no open questions.
Thank you, Marnie. I'd like to hear from board members on their thoughts on the plan and whether they think we should go forward with it or not.
I would just, like to give some gratitude for everyone who's been working so hard on this. Joe, thank you for always remaining cognizant of your staff and your supports at school and how they are, both receiving information and able to have their voices heard. Likewise with parents and with, other stakeholders in the district. Your presentations are always very spot on, very accurate, very clear, and that helps us decision make in a really clear way. So thank you for that very much. I think, based on all the conversations that have been had, all the conversations that we had this evening, the presentation we had this evening, I would say we should move forward.
I saw a thumbs up from Damien there.
I would just echo Anne's sentiments. I think that, Joe, you and the team have done an amazing job putting together a solid plan. I think it is cautious, which allows us to maintain that safety, which I think is good in this case. And you have the protocols in place that staff need to feel confident in what we're asking them to do and what parents need for them to feel confident in sending their children back.
I would also echo gratitude to Joe and others who've worked so hard to create this thoughtful plan. I also want to just express that I'm hopeful that the metrics continue to support this timeline. And I especially appreciate that there's an intention not to go backwards if the metrics do change, but within the constraints of what's lawful and appropriate and safe to keep students who are in school in such an occurrence. And I also just want to recognize that for students who've been out of school for a full year, it feels hard to wait another month, but it doesn't feel as hard as waiting until September. So for those students at the higher grade levels who do want to be back in class and whose families feel safe having them participate in this hybrid learning model, I'm just really excited that it's a month away and not 6 or 7 months away.
I would just like to know how Jordan feels.
Yep, that was my next question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that you guys all kind of said what I was about to say. Especially on behalf of the students, knowing that we have the possibility of going in next month, that's going to be really exciting, and hopefully that the metrics will be able to be right. And yeah.
Excellent. I agree with what everyone said. I think that we've got a good plan and we should follow through with it. Excellent. I believe that that's it for that portion. Now we're on to policy. Andrea, take it away.
Here we go. Okay, so we're starting with 2150, which primarily talks about ASB in particular. And for the most part, I didn't see any significant changes, but as I always read through these and try to put on all my different hats, I did catch at the bottom, Christy, on page 2, the last line, it says are available to members of both sexes. And I'm wondering if we could switch that to non-binary language.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of the only recommendation I had there. Damien, you'll be happy. All the shalls have turned into wills. And unless other people saw pieces that they wanted to discuss or go through, that would be the only change I would recommend.
So just to be clear on the language, I would suggest members of any gender.
Sure, that works great.
Okay.
Or all students, yeah.
Yeah, or one might consider members regardless of gender. All members regardless of gender.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate catching that detail. Thank you.
I feel like I have to read them 6 different times wearing different hats each time.
Mm-hmm. We appreciate the time you put in doing it.
All right, and then 2413 is basically high school equivalency credits. So I know that John reviewed this. The only parts that I caught was that there's a couple highlighted areas where we need to put in our specific types of credits based on whether we're trimesters, semesters, whichever's. And then just there's another second highlight that we want to just make sure we round out before we adopt it. And not to put John on the spot, but I heard, John, you had a chance to weigh in on this and make any shifts or changes. So I'm assuming that what's presented here supports what you were looking at. Okay.
Just got a Q&A from John that said yes.
Awesome.
And also one from Jackson Murphy saying, thank you for being aware of all identities. Thank you, Andrea.
You are welcome. One day it won't be an oddity. All right. The next one is more ASB. So this one is 3510. And I read through this, I didn't see any gender. Damien, all your shalls got turned to wills. And that was kind of, the rest of it is pretty much just updated language.
Amazing how many years it took for that to finally start taking place, isn't it?
You know, all these years, Damien, I noticed them now.
Brooke's been having conversations with me too a little bit, and I think he's picking up on a few things about policies as well. And he may carry a torch here soon, so that's kind of interesting, but we'll see.
We all know about Damien and his wills and shalls. All right. Did anybody have any thoughts or discussions about any of these ones? Okay. And Marnie, you are new to kind of the policy discussion piece of how this works, but the workshop is kind of our opportunity to chew on any languages or things that we want to shift or change. So what's put at the table at the workshop is a recommendation. But it's kind of our only opportunity for us as a collective board to chew on something. The next one, 4300, this is a policy around immigration enforcement in schools. For people who may not have read the entire policy, what this policy does is it recognizes that school districts are not in the business of disclosing people's immigration status. They are also not in the business of reporting immigration status unless they have a court order to do so. So this is one of those policies that just outlines that schools are considered safe spaces, and that we don't get involved in that. What I noticed on page 1, 2, and 3 is that there are just parts where we need to add in South Whidbey or South Whidbey School District. Those were the only pieces that I saw any areas of adjustment. This is one where this is definitely a recommended policy. And so if there is any specific language that we wanted to shift or change, we could have a conversation around that. And then as long as it passes like the legal frameworks, then we can adopt that. So in particular with these kinds of policies, I try to look for inclusive language and language that recognizes circumstance, not necessarily labeling. So definitely take a look at this and see if there was anything that we missed in pulling it together.
Yeah, I was just reading through one more time for gendered language in particular. I think that this is really important to make school a safe place for students, no matter their immigration status, so they can focus on learning.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm going to say from my time on the school board that this even goes really deep throughout the state. For example, Pasco School District has 78% of their students are non-English speaking, whereas in the Fife School District, they speak 31 different languages. So this is a pretty broad spectrum that we're dealing with here. And so it's got a lot of history in the state of Washington, just in case anybody's curious, that they can go start looking and researching different things throughout the whole entire state, because that's what WASDA does, is represents the school districts of the state of Washington.
Yep.
Yeah, I really appreciate this. I just think it's so important for there to be equal access to public education, and not have families' documentation status make them feel unsafe enrolling a student in public school. So I'm grateful for the board's attention to this.
Yeah, and it's not a new policy, it's been in place 2007, so longer than I can do quick math. And I think that it's, we're just updating it, but I think it's one that we don't often talk about.
One thing I noticed is on page 2, the first point under gathering immigration related information, we've got a his, her parent. That we should
Okay.
probably change to their
So
parent.
maybe switch it to there.
Yeah.
Good catch, Brooke.
Yeah, and I like that it says parent or guardian, so it should say that in all the spaces as well, wherever there's parents, because this is very impactful for families who are experiencing housing difficulties, because it can affect their Mckinney-Vento status as well. And so, yeah, so I like that the language stays, clear around who can be part of the conversation.
Yep, didn't see any other gendered language, and I agree on the parent or guardian.
Yep.
Yeah, good point, Anne.
Okay, and then
real quick, can I go back to 2413?
Sure.
I noticed something on my previous read through and forgot to mention it. I'm trying to figure out where I found that.
Brooke, you may have frozen for a moment. So if you already spoke to what you noticed, we didn't hear it, or I didn't hear it.
Sorry, yes, it is on the 3rd page. It's a subgroup of students. I wonder about that term subgroup could be taken pejoratively by some. I know it was brought up in a
so I think what they mean by that, so with the changes of the graduation requirements, there was a lot of concern at the state level that this would specifically impact special education students because it changed the career pathways. So I think that when they are referring to subgroups of students, they are looking at specifically, are there specific student populations that fall in other categories that are overrepresented in this career path?
That actually refers back to the demographic breakdown when you're looking at the school report card as well. They call them subgroups, right? It's based on whether it's gender or ethnicity or disability or those subgroups. So,
I'm perfectly fine. This is actually not something that I had heard of being problematic until today, so it may just be over concern. It was just the word subgroup that someone had a complaint about, and it jumped out at me. So
what if we use the word of which demographics of students?
Yeah, I think.
Well, or which a particular subset of students. I don't know if there's a.
I like demographic, but I don't know if that causes problems anywhere else. Yeah.
Why don't you
I wonder
disaggregated data to see if any particular group of students.
I think that works just fine.
I think that might be worse.
Yeah.
I wonder about just the word annually review disaggregated data to see which sets of students.
Sets.
I think you would, for a policy standpoint, demographic would probably be your closest counterpart to this one if we don't leave it a subgroup. I think if you start saying things like sets of students, then that could be construed into like grade level bands, those different kinds of pieces. And that's counterintuitive to what they're actually wanting you to measure.
You can also, as I've said to Brooke in the past recently, you can consult WASDA.
Do you want to call WASDA?
As to what they would recommend, because they have 2 lawyers that help set policy. That's who and what they do. and they might be interested to hear from you.
I appreciate that recommendation. And being that I am not a data analyst, I see the word subgroup as probably having a very specific definition. And so I don't object to its use on the assumption that it probably has a specific definition to a data set.
We could certainly put an asterisk there and define it.
Yep. So I'm going to hop on school report card real quick and see what word they use, because that's what they're referring to, is where they'll pull the data.
Okay, that sounds like a great idea.
And the word that they use, let's type it in South Whitby. I think they use demographic. They use diversity report is their new word. And so they have the diversity report, and then they have enrollment by student demographic, enrollment by student program and characteristic. So you either see demographic or characteristic pretty much down along the left side of that site. The other one that they use is student program, which maybe review the disaggregated data to see which student program is receiving mastery-based content, or our programs are receiving.
But it's particular to the student.
It seems like demographic is the nearest equivalency.
Did you freeze again, Brooke, or are you just thinking?
And I apologize for this.
You look like you were thinking really hard about this sentence.
We've shut down everything streaming in the house except this. I don't know what's going on.
I have to do the same thing.
It seems like demographic is the nearest equivalent.
Okay.
Do people have any problems with that?
If demographic still meets the professional parameters for what we're actually talking about here, I see it as a good fix. But if subgroup is the current professional language that's used, in other documents, it might be wise to stick with it, maybe with an asterisk, or maybe with, some quotes around it.
And I still say just consult WASDA to see why they're using that word, and or if any other words suffice.
Okay, I think that's a really good idea, Daniel.
How about we leave it up to Joe and Christy?
Outstanding. We will consult WASDA and look at other policies and.
Thank you. Sorry to create that extra word.
Recommended word.
Yep.
Or phrase or paragraph.
Thank you all, though, for recognizing that word can be construed in a pejorative way. So it's good to always be thinking through these things. So appreciated about the discussion.
All right, last one, 6220. Thought this would be easy peasy. It's bid or request proposal requirements, and it was like adding just a couple language changes. I did catch on page 2, they are referring to the superintendent as his or her. So I would recommend we just switch that to there. And that Christy is under E, right above the RCW. So it'd be over the course of their employment. That was the only catch I found. Did anybody have any other thoughts about any information in there? Oh,
Yeah.
I found another one on
Yep.
page 3 under E, conflict of interest. And third line, first paragraph. Oh, and one right there, second line. Aha.
Yeah, there's a bunch in that paragraph.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just switch them all to they.
A find and replace for the words his or her and he or she might help root out some instances that we can't spot with a quick read through.
Yep.
Mhm.
And that's it for policy.
Excellent.
Yeah, if it's okay, what I'll do is whenever there's new policies, I'll just go ahead and make those changes ahead of time. And because these are straight from WASDA. These are straight. I don't do much change. I don't do any changes. I just give you exactly what the WASDA recommended policy is. But I'll go through when I send in new ones to find the he or she and just make sure to change it to they.
I appreciate that, Christy. And I also appreciate going through it myself to remember myself that we need to catch it, if that makes sense.
And to a point that Damien had when he and I were talking about it, we should see if we can push these changes back upstream to WASDA.
I know when I was at the conference, their general session last fall, this was conversation they were having. So they're headed in that direction, but we can always give them a little push.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so that everybody understands what we're saying there is that we fix policies that sometimes might be able to be used on a state level.
Mm-hmm.
And the next policy review comes out in a couple of years. We fixed it for our school district. It comes to us again from WASDA, and it didn't have our changes on it from before. And so we're reviewing a policy that has none of our changes. And now we're trying to figure out what did we say 5 years ago and or whatever. So from a state level, all the school districts could use a flow chart back and forth between WASDA on policies to probably take care of a lot of things that are particular to each and every different school district, but at least help school districts understand what they are as well. So that's what
one thing that Christy does when she sends these out is she sends what WASDA's recommendations are, and then she also sends what we currently have. So I do a lot of comparison back and forth about what, like, are they significantly changing the nature of the policy in that? And so there are a couple, and Damien, you've seen us, we come back to certain ones and we say, no, we changed it specifically, and we reject WASDA's recommendations on those ones.
Yeah, these lined out ones, the comparison is between our current one. So it's not the changes from WASDA's old to WASDA's new. It's the changes from our current to WASDA's recommended.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christy, for clarifying that.
And that's a ton of work on Christy's end, just so everybody knows.
I can imagine. Thank you, Christy.
Everyone thinks that I'm doing all the work on that. It's a lot of Christy.
Oh, I'm guilty. I thought you did.
Okay.
I thank you for the compliment.
Are there any more board comments? Anything that?
Brooke, are you generally speaking, or are you still speaking in regards to policy?
Generally speaking at this point.
Yeah, I have a couple if I could.
Absolutely.
So one of the things I was thinking about, and I didn't know the answer, so sorry, Joe, this may be a surprise, but you don't have to answer it now, but I think it's something that we need to look at answering here in the future. I know that the board positions that are open in 2021 will be Andrea for Freeland and Ann at large for Julie. What I didn't know, I'm kind of wondering is Charlie's position that Marnie now has, is that open for?
No,
Marnie finishes the term.
Okay, because I was asked that question a couple times, so that's great. Thank you for knowing that. And then the other thing that popped into my head was it's been a year for Reading F, and I was wondering, not just for her on her dedication plaque at the outdoor classroom, but for Coach Lear as well on the stadium. And I don't remember if we finished those up or not.
I will find out. I am not, I don't know right now.
And that's understandable. I mean, it just popped into my head when I thought of Rini, and it's been a year and all of this, and so then Coach Lear popped in right after that, and I was sitting there trying to think, was there a third one that we did too? But I can't remember that either. So that's
Yeah,
all
I just don't recall. I think we did that about a year ago, and then all heck broke loose. So I'm not sure where we are on that. I will circle back and find out where those plaques are in process.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Then we will adjourn this meeting and move to executive session for under 1 hour for performance of a public employee.
And I sent you the link for the exec session, so we're going to sign out of this meeting.